If they voted to leave, I think you would see stock markets around the world selling off on that. I think the British pound would be significantly affected in the negative direction. Bryson, Wells Fargo Securities. UK citizens will vote on the EU referendum this Thursday. How do you think this will affect the markets in these last days?
Well, so it's interesting. There was these polls out over the weekend that showed that the Remain camp has moved ahead, and so we've seen some pretty significant rallies today in financial markets based on that. So I mean, it'll depend on how things shake out here on Thursday. I would think that a vote to leave, now that it seems that the probability is lessened, that would be even more of a market surprise. And I think, if they voted to leave, I think you would see, stock markets around the world selling off on that. I think the British pound would be significantly affected in a negative direction by that. And, bond yields of peripheral EU sort of countries, like Portugal and Greece and et cetera, those bonds would sell off as well. Obviously, if they vote to stay in, I think you probably get more of a bounce in terms of financial markets in a positive direction. But given the fact that we've priced in this weekend now, again, higher probability of a Remain vote. I don't know how much further that bounce would occur, but it would certainly be seen as good news, I think.
On Wednesday, the ECB will have their non-monetary policy meeting. Do you think the market will respond more because of the EU referendum the following day?
Well, it depends if they come out and say anything after the meeting, and I'm somewhat skeptical that they will. I mean, they had a policy meeting just a few weeks ago, and in the formal statement that President Draghi read, there wasn't any mention of this vote. He did get a question in the question and answer period, about the effects of Brexit, and he, essentially said we're prepared for all sorts of contingencies. So I don't think they're going to highlight that necessarily in any sort of statement that they may make after this meeting. If they did, the markets would view that with some sort of interest. But again, I'd be surprised if they made a big deal out of it ahead of the actual vote.
US existing home sales and new home sales for May will be out on Thursday and Friday. Both of these posted better than expected figures than the market expected. Do you think the trend will continue for May? And is it a representative indication of the health of the US economy?
Yeah, so if you start with existing home sales, we get that out first. That'll come out on Wednesday. And, the consensus expectation there is for home sales to rise close to 2%. And if that comes out right, existing home sales, that would be a cycle high. Now, we're not anywhere close to where we were back in 2006, but, again, it would be a cycle high. New home sales, they're actually expecting them to fall pretty significantly because there was a huge surge the month before. But that said, in general, it appears that home sales, whether new or existing in the United States, continue to trend higher. And, I think it is an indication that, the U.S. economy continues to expand and enjoying, moderate growth here. And so I think you will probably, and our expectation going forward is for continuing expansion in the U.S. economy. So I do believe you'll see home sales continuing to trend higher in coming months.
Thank you, Bryson. That's all for today's Week Ahead. I'm Celeste Skinner. Be sure to stay tuned for all the latest updates.